On this Thursday edition of the OFN Today, Ted Sevransky of Covers.com will preview key games this week in pro and college football. Meanwhile, special guest Jamie Uyeyama of IrishSportsDaily.com will talk Notre Dame football before their big game at Northwestern on Saturday night. As the OFN Today on the Our Lads Football Radio Network starts now. It's Thursday, November 1st, 2018. I'm Greg DePalma. Thanks for tuning in to the OFN Today. Brought to you by OurLads.com, providing the best pro and college football depth charts on the net. And Covers.com, featuring live scores, stats, and odds, considered the most convenient and entertaining source for sports news and facts, with over 45 million visits a year. All right, we talked about the college football playoff rankings yesterday with Mark Lawrence of Covers.com, but why not talk a little bit more about it with Ted Sevransky? So, Ted, the rankings are out. Is this something you can use for handicapping games?
No.
Okay.
It's not something I
Next.
use at all. I mean, in a word, when you talk about rankings for the college football playoffs on the last day of October, this is something for the media. This is something for the fans. This is not useful information for bettors.
So nothing like for instance, I think one of the analysts said something I heard about how after the first rankings are out, I don't know, they said something about how a certain number of teams lost those first two games, and of course you got teams, Mark brought up, you got teams that might feel they're cheated. So maybe there's extra motivation to go out there. So that kind of handicapping, you don't even use any of that yourself. You don't even care.
Not even one iota. Look, Notre Dame has plenty of pressure on them. Okay, at 8-0 going to Northwestern on the road, the pressure's already there for Notre Dame. Whether they're ranked number 4, number 6, number 2 doesn't matter. The pressure, it's not like the ranking itself changed that. Now sometimes you say, well, you look at the team ranked number 5 or number 6 or number 7. And maybe margin of victory starts to matter for those teams. Yeah, it does. It means the coach may punch in a late touchdown against someone that they wouldn't have done earlier in the season.
Okay.
So you worry about that in the games where they're laying 30 points against someone that can't compete.
Sure.
But those aren't games that I tend to get involved with a ton anyway.
Right.
In November, I'm not. Someone steps out of conference and laying 32. I'm not laying 32 with the favorite in those games, regardless. Even if it is, especially a top 5 or a top 10 team that's going to be significantly priced in the markets as an elite contender. But the one thing that I do look at maybe is teams that haven't been here before. The Washington States of the world. As the pressure ratchets, remember, these are 19, 20, 20-year-old kids.
Yeah.
Not all of them will respond well to the pressure. In general, I would say maybe you look at some of these teams to fade more than some of these teams that you want to back. Based on those initial rankings, even though, in theory, teams out of the top 4 will be worried about margin. It doesn't work out that way. Every year this stuff plays out, and we'll see. Everybody's going to lose.
Oh, yeah.
Every team's going to lose once.
Yeah, somebody, I guess, look, there's a possibility we might have one undefeated team, but I don't think there's ever been 2. So, and with this week, Alabama, you got, you out of the top 4 teams, you have Alabama. We know Alabama or LSU will lose, so we know that. And we also know that you mentioned Notre Dame. Notre Dame could lose. So I actually think Notre Dame is going to lose at some point over these next 4 weeks. Not because I don't think they're having a great season, and I think that they are definitely capable of being a playoff team. Not sure if they're a championship team. I'll consider them a championship team if they do run the table and play in the playoffs. But I think the schedule. I know people. I heard some analysts saying, "Oh, the schedule that doesn't look all that bad," or they might even use the word easy. And I'm like, what are you talking about? These are not easy games for Notre Dame. This is not Alabama or Clemson. Starting even this week, Notre Dame could slip up.
Sure. Again, not like, and the schedule itself, how it plays out. Road game at Northwestern, Florida State at home, Syracuse in New York the following week in L.A. against USC.
Yeah.
That's not an easy slate.
No.
And I'm with you conceptually. if the Irish run the table, they deserve to be there.
Yeah, and I would think that they're actually a championship threat because that means, wow, I didn't expect that. They're better. They're actually a little bit better than I even thought. So,
well, I mean, if no one's beating Alabama if Alabama plays their A game. Okay, if Alabama has a hiccup, Notre Dame.
Well, that's what we're going to find out this week because as much as Alabama's offense has really been the part of their team that has been better for the first time that I could recall under Nick Saban than the defense, we're going to find out this week because of the fact that first of all, they're finally playing a good team. Second of all, they're playing a team that has got a defense this good on the road. And we'll find out then. We'll find out. Look, we all know Alabama's still going to score points this week. That's just, it's going to happen. This ain't going to be one of those Alabama-LSU 16-13 games. But how about Alabama's defense, too? What if Alabama only scores 24? Can their defense, which to tell you the truth, I haven't been completely over the moon with. I think this defense is beatable compared to other Alabama great team defenses. This is definitely not one of their best. Not that LSU's got a great offense, but if you only score 20, 24 points, is that enough? I don't know.
Every quote coming out of LSU this week is, we're going to shut this team down. Our defense is good enough. We're going to be able to make plays.
You might want to stop saying that stuff. I don't like it when they talk. So they've been talking.
Well, I mean, it's what, they're kids. It's what they do.
Well, why, do we hear Alabama kids talking?
No.
Yeah, exactly. So,
I mean, Saban runs the least fun, the least fun college football dynasty that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
All right. There's just no fun, and
he complains when they're up 50.
When you think about the best college football teams, I've been in Las Vegas for 20 years. And the first great college football team I remember was that Miami squad with, Frank Gore, who was in there. The running backs were like 3 Hall of Famers in the NFL.
Sure, yeah.
They had 15 first-rounders on the defense of that team. That was, really higher power-rated team. And then the USC team, the one that lost to Texas was the one that I had the highest power rate of the bunch.
Yeah.
And they had, first-round talent.
Sure.
At every position on both sides of the field.
Yeah.
This Alabama team probably power rates higher than either of those two squads. They're as good as any team I've ever seen in 20 years out here. Not better, not way better than the elite USC and the elite Miami, but certainly, they're from a straight numerical standpoint, they do power rate a little bit higher than those squads. So it's as good a team as we've seen. But this point spread's insane,
Yeah, it is. It's a lot.
And that LSU defense is no joke.
No.
And again, every quote coming out of there is, okay, let's see Alabama get in the 30s against us. And I'll give the Tide credit if they do, but if I'm playing this game, I can only look at the LSU side of the equation. I really could.
Yeah, it's why would you? I mean, out of all the weeks you could go with Alabama, why would you go this week? There's no reason to. And I know you're getting less points. I get that. But still, there are other weeks. What are they? 5-3 against the spread. So even though they're giving a ton of points this season, they're still covering games. So I wouldn't. If you want to pick a better game, pick the game the following week against Mississippi State. Do that, or pick the Auburn game. Both of those games are at home. Because if Alabama wins this game, then this is going to be the undefeated team. Because they're not going to lose at home to Mississippi State or Auburn. So
there's always the fun of the SEC championship.
There is
Funny
that.
things tend to happen.
There is that.
Unless
Kentucky surprises Georgia on Saturday, because this is for the SEC East. It's so weird that it's November. What is it going to be? November 3rd, and the SEC East will be over after this game. So Kentucky beating Florida, Georgia beating Florida. Winner of this one wins the East. Georgia has beaten Kentucky 8 straight, but that's no surprise. This is the football team, not the basketball team. But this is a different Kentucky team, no question. It's the biggest game ever in the history of Kentucky football. I'm a huge Benny Snell fan. Problem is, after what I've seen, especially even last week, Benny Snell is not 100%. He ain't even anywhere close to 100% because there were so many times they could have handed the ball off to him and keep spots last week, and they didn't. And that tells me he's not anywhere near 100%. I can't see them beating Georgia unless Benny Snell can rush for 150 yards.
I'm with you 100%. What's wrong with Georgia? That, to me, is a question. And I know they got the win and cover, and they rallied back against the Gators last week. But Georgia maybe I got multiple issues, but Jake Fromm just doesn't look comfortable. And I don't know, is he looking behind him at Justin Fields and going, oh, well, I got to, is it too much pressure on the kid? Fromm doesn't look comfortable in the pocket, and that concerns me against what has turned into the most devastating defense this side of Alabama in the SEC. And say what you want about Florida. Look what happened when Kentucky played Florida. They shut them down.
Sure.
When you look what happened, Georgia. What happened when Georgia decided to step up in class against one of the better offenses. It wasn't so pretty in the LSU loss. The defense got gashed around a little back game in two. But in my mind, it's Fromm. Fromm is not the guy that he was last year.
No.
And that's what's holding Georgia back, and that's what gives Kentucky the potential for life in this ballgame. But, what the Wildcats did last week in Missouri, this is on the road, trailing by margin, trailing by 2 scores against the Tigers. They held Missouri without a first down. Drew Lock, who's going to be the first quarterback taken, or might well be the first quarterback taken, without a first down on 8 drives in the second half. Despite the fact the offense couldn't do anything. And they were defense back on the field again, and back on the field again, and back on the field again. Kentucky's defense is no joke. I haven't seen one team move the football against them all year, and Fromm,
you're right, yeah,
isn't right. So, you want to say, hey, Georgia outclasses them, and they probably should, but I'm reluctant to lay the price with the ball. It's not a game I'm going to bet.
Yeah, it's 9, and Georgia was able to win last week because it was interesting early in the game, like that first quarter. It was interesting how much Georgia babied Fromm. It was like run. Oh, I'll throw a little like if he was a rookie quarterback in the NFL, in week 1, like we're gonna throw the little 2-yard pass, and even the touchdown pass. Let's keep this in mind. It's very important that Georgia, a couple of those touchdown passes Fromm threw was against the backup DB for Florida because their starter went out. Now maybe because we know Fromm was good last year, and they probably should have won the championship game last year. Maybe it didn't. Maybe you got to look at it as okay. I don't think anybody really cares in Georgia that it was a backup DB because if Jake Fromm just gains his confidence back, that really is all that matters, and that's the only way anyway. Georgia's going to have a shot at Alabama if they play them in the SEC championship game. Is if Fromm uses the Florida game as a springboard for the rest of the season.
No argument. Right now, Georgia's shown more cracks than I thought they would. Mm-hmm. I thought their team would be better than they have been this season. They've shown defensive cracks. They've shown cracks at QB. Those are both concerns for me.
Yeah. Well, Anthony Dasher, who writes for UGAsports.com, said he thought the biggest difference was leadership. And now the leadership seemed to come through last week. So that's why we'll see. It could have been one game. We don't know. I think Kentucky's not a bad money line play. I wouldn't throw a whole lot on it, like as much as I liked Purdue last week. But it's a good money line play, small one. Why not? They're having a miracle season. It could happen. It's not going to be a crazy result. Let's just put it that way. If they actually upset Georgia in this one, the way both teams have played this season.
No, it wouldn't be a good. That being said, from the mainstream media, it'd be the most insane thing that ever happened in the history of college football.
Yeah, probably, right? I wonder if that line goes up. You think at all? Game day goes up?
There's been two-way action on this game from the get-go. We have not seen a big move. And, in fact, I'm looking just now, as we speak, the sharper shops have definitely taken a Kentucky position on this ballgame. It's the public who is betting on Georgia.
Interesting. Okay. In the Big Ten, you have some big games, and Iowa at Purdue is a big game. Penn State at Michigan is the biggest one. Michigan is playing their best football in a long time. They've won 5 straight. They've covered 4 out of 5 at home this year. And let's keep in mind the only game they didn't cover at home was that 37-point spread against SMU. So they've been very dominant at home. They're a 10.5-point favorite against Penn State. Penn State is not playing their best football, probably fortunate to win last week. There are some key injuries for Michigan, but they had the week off, so maybe they get some guys back like Rashawn Gary, who hasn't played the last couple of weeks, and Michigan hasn't needed him. So that's how good Michigan's defense has been. The favorite in this series has won and covered the last 4, including the last 3, by a 129-39 margin. I kind of like that. I see that as where it's going. Michigan has answered every question they've needed to answer against teams that have righted them over the past, or wronged them, over the past year or two. And I see that continuing on Saturday.
Yeah, certainly conceptually, Michigan off a bye in a game they care. But remember, Penn State last year, 42-13 against the Wolverines. Mm-hmm. And if you remember the game, Nittany Lions were up 35-13, and they threw for the end zone late, and they scored. And it's something that I was reading a couple quotes. Michigan remembers that.
Okay.
So that's the kind of thing in this point spread range that matters a lot.
Yes, it does.
Because Michigan's up 9. I may take a knee, maybe not. Maybe they punch it in. Certainly, Wolverines coming in off a bye in a position to be defensively in position to as healthy as they've been. And when we look at the skill position talent around McSorley this year, everyone knows that Barkley's gone. It's not just Barkley, They missed Gesicki, tight end. They don't have a playmaking wide receiver this year the way they've had in recent seasons. The Penn State offense has been the Trace McSorley show.
Oh, yeah.
But that's it.
Yep.
And that concerns me against the defense of this caliber.
Yep.
That being said, how's Penn State? And Penn State's 5-3 against the spread. For all their struggles this year, they've been just fine. They've been making money, and they're certainly no joke of a football team. The strength of that defense is the pass rush. They have been dominant at putting pressure on opposing quarterbacks, leading the Big Ten in sacks, leading the Big Ten in pressures, et cetera, et cetera. I haven't seen Shea Patterson respond well to that this year. And the Wolverine offense has not responded well to pressure, and that offensive line is not one of Michigan's better units. So when you talk about this point spread range, it does concern me to lay it with Michigan against a team like the Nittany Lions that's going to put a lot of pressure on a QB that's made his fair share of mistakes this year.
Well, the thing is, no doubt, Michigan is going to want to run and make it a little bit easier for Patterson so he doesn't have to deal with that kind of pressure, which we definitely have seen this season, including the Notre Dame game, which he didn't look very good at. But let's keep in mind that Penn State, after the demoralizing loss to Ohio State, since that game, they haven't been the same. And, they've won 2 out of 3. But they haven't been this. They were very fortunate. In some books they won, and some they tied, and some they lost last week. So that cover situation last week could have gone either way, and that could have been 0-3 against the spread since the Ohio State game. So I kind of like the first thing you said anyway, because this is college football, and I also like the way Michigan's going right now. I haven't backed them a lot this season, but this is a game I'm going to back them. They've won 3 straight. They've won 7 straight. They've covered 3 straight. I think they'll keep those streaks going. Let's move on over to the Big 12 game, a big one, and that is West Virginia and Texas. And Texas coming off the loss to Oklahoma State. West Virginia rebounded after the loss to Iowa State. Both teams are they're actually 2 out of 3 that are tied with Oklahoma for the Big 12 lead. 2 of those 3 teams are going to wind up in the inaugural Big 12 champion, or not the inaugural, but it'll be what, the second one, I believe, the second Big 12 championship game.
I don't know.
Last year was Oklahoma TCU, I think. So. Anyway, so that's how big this game is. I just think Texas is a little better, to tell you the truth. They're only a 2-point home favorite. I'm not going to look into you can maybe throw in some of your data. That's what you do for a living. But I'm just looking at 2 teams. I think the best team is the team that's at home, and it's basically a win line. So I'm taking Texas.
I wouldn't talk you out of it, and I know there's a lot of support for West Virginia in the marketplace. I've talked to a number of people in town this week talking about the Mountaineers. Is look, you have the better quarterback in Greer, the guy with the more NFL upside, and you have the superior defense in West Virginia, and you're catching points. And that, okay, I understand that conceptually. Then you start to ask yourself, is Greer really the better quarterback? Sure, he's got more NFL upside, but Greer is throwing picks.
Yeah, this is college football.
Yeah, exactly. I don't care about who's got the more NFL upside.
Yeah.
I love the guy that has no NFL prospects and is a great college football quarterback because that's the guy I'm betting on this Saturday, not next Sunday.
Yes.
And Greer is throwing interceptions. And Texas' secondary was embarrassed. That's a senior-laden secondary. They got lit up at Oklahoma State last week. From the local papers this week, multiple senior leaders on that team were, we got embarrassed. That ain't happening 2 weeks in a row. That ain't happening on our home field, et cetera, et cetera. And when you have an opposing QB that's throwing interceptions, and your senior-laden secondary off an embarrassment, hey, that makes more of a case for Texas. And one more factor to consider here. We've seen West Virginia on the road so far this season. They played in Big 12 play. They played at Texas Tech and at Iowa State. Game against Texas Tech, they had one touchdown in the second half. They came out on an interception return. Game against Iowa State, they got shut out after halftime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's two Big 12 road games. The offense has gotten 0 points.
Sure.
Not even a field goal.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't trust Holgorsen making adjustments at halftime. He's not making good adjustments. And from a value standpoint, West Virginia off a blowout win, Texas off a bad loss.
Yeah.
Guess what? If the situation reversed, if Texas would have blown out Okie State last week and West Virginia, whatever, would have eked by, this line could be 7. 6. No, it wouldn't shock me at all. Yeah. Texas or pass for me.
Yeah,
the
game last week, to tell you the truth, I talked about that with on one of my other shows. That game was actually very predictable, the Oklahoma State game, because Oklahoma State hadn't played a good game in like 6 weeks. We've seen this before at Oklahoma State. It was not a surprise that Oklahoma State won that football game. I don't look at that as Texas didn't play well last week. They're not very good, so West Virginia's going to eat them up. Nah, that game didn't mean anything to me when I'm talking about this game. And yeah, West Virginia is very inconsistent. And I think Texas has got the better coach, to tell you the truth. So I think they're going to find a way. All right, let's shoot on over to the NFL now. And we got 3 to cover there. So let's and there's 3 big ones. Let's start with the Chargers in Seattle. Seattle's a 2-point favorite at home against L.A. You got 2 hot teams. The Chargers have won 4 straight. Seattle won 4-5 straight up and against the spread. Chargers coming off the bye from London, trying to get Gordon back, which I think will play unless he has a setback. There's even talk that Bosa might play. So I haven't heard anything in the last 24 hours, but that's what I heard 24 hours ago, that Bosa might play in this game. Only the 3rd home game this season for Seattle, and yet they've won 4-5. So this could be a dangerous Seattle team, and why? Because they're actually running the football, and that is giving Russell Wilson an opportunity to throw the football a little bit more time. And now get this, they're 1-0 straight up and against the spread as a favorite, 2-0 against the spread overall. And these are home numbers for Seattle, and we know how good Seattle is as a home team. This is a real tough one to call. I don't know if I could even touch this game. I think this is a game I'm just going to enjoy, and I hope Gordon and Bosa play. I hope everybody's as healthy as they're going to be, because this is a big test for both teams, and especially for Seattle, because I think we all know the Chargers, barring injuries, they'll be in the playoffs, but we don't know about Seattle.
Exactly. I'm with you 100%. And when you're asking yourself, what are the markets thinking about these two? The markets have been fairly high on the Chargers all year. And the markets have absolutely had no idea what to do with the Seahawks. Basically, if you go through and look at the line moves on Seahawks games this year, I think they're all wrong. Like, everyone has gone in the wrong direction. Almost everyone has gone in the wrong direction. The markets have no idea what to do with Seattle. When they fade Seattle, the Seattle plays well. When they bet on Seattle, they have not played as well. And, I will give the Seahawks credit for what they've done. But 4 wins in 5 games, they beat the Cowboys. Cowboys offense, back in week 3, the Cowboys offense really wasn't working then. They beat the Cardinals by a field goal. They beat the Raiders, and then last week against the Lions in a game that Detroit, flat out didn't play well. And then Seattle got off to had a big first half and was able to coast thereafter, thanks to the ability to run the football. I don't know if they're going to have so much success running against L.A. I really love that the Chargers front 7 defensively. That's a scary-looking unit. And although, Wilson can make plays. It is, and I'm with you in terms of the concept of this game. Chris Carson, if he can run, Seattle's going to win. If Carson approaches 100 yards, I would expect the Seahawks to emerge victorious in this ball game. If Gordon can run, the Chargers are going to win. So this is one for in-game, man. You see early on, one of the two teams is controlling the line of scrimmage. That's the team you want your money on, and that's the type of bet I'll make in the first quarter, not before kickoff.
Okay, interesting. Let's go to the Rams, the undefeated Rams against New Orleans and the Saints. Boy, this could very well, more than likely, be the NFC Championship rematch coming up in a couple of months. The Saints have won 6 straight. They've covered 5 straight. But even though the Rams are undefeated, they're just 1-4 against the spread last 5. That doesn't matter in this one because they're the dog. They're the undefeated dogs in this game, and it looks like they're getting Cooper Kupp back. Boy, the Saints are playing good football, beat the red-hot Ravens at the time. Then they beat the Vikings, get revenge last week, really did handle them. And now can they make it 3 for 3 hosting the Rams? Wow. This is another game that I'm probably just going to enjoy watching. It is. I mean, I could see why the Saints are the favorite because they're red hot. The Rams, you kind of after last week, you get the feeling, they're overdue. They're going to lose, and they can't win them all. So this is the perfect spot for the Saints to beat them. It's only 2. Okay, I'll take the Saints. And then the other part of me goes, boy, man, I'm getting points, and I got the Rams. Interesting. So that's why I'm kind of torn.
Yeah, and it's certainly a game that's tearing up a lot of bettors. We've seen good two-way action, although there has been a little movement towards L.A. this morning based on the Kupp announcement. With Kupp, they still officially listed as questionable, but the markets are expecting him to play, and they've moved accordingly. And the other issue here, of course, when you look at I guess there's 2 big issues to talk about. First, the Rams aren't going 16-0. Okay, no. I will make that bold prediction right here.
Yes.
Okay, they're not going to go 16-0. You look at their schedule. This is a very losable game for LA. And after playing in these, intense, that was a pretty intense game last week against the Pack.
Sure.
And now it's fourth game on the road in 5 weeks, and all of that. It's all right. The Rams aren't going to win them all. This is a very losable game for LA in that regard, and the markets are telling us that. All that being said, there's no comparison between these 2 teams. Just look at the defensive stats. Forget the offense. Okay, we have 2 great offenses, period.
Yep.
Defensively, one team can make stops, the other team can't. Oh, and the team that can make stops just picked up Dante Fowler, by the way. Which is do they have any draft picks left and money?
They don't
need them.
Where do they? Yeah, they better win the Super Bowl, that's for sure, after all that. After mortgaging everything in the future, but they probably will.
They have to get to the Super Bowl. They don't have to win it. But if it's Super Bowl or bust for LA, but it's Super Bowl or bust for New Orleans too. Make no mistake about it. It's not like the Saints have this huge window of opportunity.
No, same thing.
To be successful. There's one other concern I have about New Orleans. When you look at obviously defensively they're nowhere near LA. But even when you look at what happened, they won last week. They won last week with Drew Brees throwing for 120 yards.
Yeah.
Why don't they throw 120 yards? They don't have the weapons this year. It's Michael Thomas and blank in terms of wide receiver talent.
They want to run the ball.
Off to Kamara, and Kamara's catching a lot of passes in the backfield, and Thomas is the one guy who can stretch it. But if they're not winning the game on the ground, Brees isn't capable at this stage of his career of throwing them to victory. Jared Goff is. Rams are past for this better.
All right, yeah. I mean, you've definitely you've done a good job of making me think about taking the Rams, especially because, and I think we saw that in the 2 games and the end of the Denver game, the second half of the Denver game. What a big difference the passing offense is in LA without Cooper Kupp. So,
sure. And there's a point here that's very, very similar to a point that we made earlier in the show, but I just want to bring it up one more time real quick. One team's coming off a winning cover, the other on national TV winning cover in New Orleans. The other team didn't cover last week and hasn't been covering numbers. Okay. So one team, the betting bandwagon just grows and grows and grows.
Got it.
And the other team, the betting bandwagon, not nearly as large right now on the Rams, despite how good they are. So that matters.
I mean, it's one of those situations where I go. Where I always try to, when I'm conflicted, I'll kind of, let me look into my crystal ball. It's Monday. Rams beat Saints, and I didn't take the Rams. Boy, what an idiot I was for not taking the undefeated Rams getting points. That's one of those things I'll do.
It's very easy to Monday morning quarterback. We all do it. Oh, I should have.
Well, that's why I don't want to. That's why I don't. That's
Yeah.
why I look into my crystal ball, because I have to. I'm warning myself. In that spot, I'm going, no, I'm taking the Rams. Because if I lose, then I'll go, all right, well, I had an undefeated team getting points. I lost. What am I going to do? All right, let's go to Green Bay and New England, the last one this week for us here on the show. Coming up, by the way, Notre Dame football talk in just a few minutes. But Green Bay and New England, can the Packers come back after an excruciating loss last week? Can they come right back, go to Foxborough on Sunday night, and play another really good football game? This is going to be interesting to see if they can do that. I mentioned this to Mark yesterday. See, this is going to be one of those games, like I said to myself last week, when I wasn't sure where I was going to go with a money line play. I just said, like I'm going to say this week, all right, well, if I'm looking for a money line play, even though we're going up against the Patriots, just like last week, even though I'm going up against the undefeated Rams, why wouldn't I take Aaron Rodgers +2 or +250? Of course I'm going to do that, and if he loses, I lose. But why would I take take Tennessee? I'm taking Aaron Rodgers at a 2-to-1 price or better, and hoping he cashes a check for me, because they played really good on defense. I'm not completely sold on the way the Patriots are playing offensively lately. They didn't look great against Chicago. They didn't look great against the Bills. But the Packers have got to play as good as they played last week, and we'll see whether they can do it or not.
16-7. I got the Patriots 16-7 as road chalk. Home favorites their last 23 tries, which is astounding.
Sure, with their number,
because they are the best team in the NFL. They go to the Super Bowl every year. Everyone knows them. They're not sleeping on anyone. They're on TV every week, and they're still all they do is win games and cover point spreads. Why? Because the sharp money comes in against New England every week. It's coming in against New England this week. Why? The Patriots doesn't have their statistical profile is no good. They're outgaining opponents by 0.1 yards per play this year, which is basically a 500 level team. Green Bay is 500, and they've outgained their foes by, I think, 0.6 or 0.7 yards per play this season, which says that, shows that yards per play is not the only stat, but it's one that holds a lot of sway in the wise guy betting markets, and Green Bay is significantly better than New England in that statistical category. Of course, you look at who the Patriots have played this season. They played the Texans when the Texans were awful. Jacksonville, they're sub 500. Detroit, sub 500. Miami's at 500, but they sure feel like a sub 500 team. Indy's sub 500. Chicago, they got over 500 last week, but they're not certainly elite. Buffalo last week. The only game that they played against a good foe all year was Kansas City, and we saw what happened to that defense against the Chiefs. They got shellacked in that ballgame. Couldn't get stops. So am I excited about laying with New England, even with all of the point spread success they've had on this field? No, can't lay that. I don't know that. I'm tired of losing against the Patriots because their statistical profile stinks, and every time you look at it, you say, oh, I should bet against New England this week.
Yeah, well.
And yet, I cashed ticket with Green Bay last week, and they did what they had to do with Ty Montgomery, by the way.
Yes, they did.
Ty Montgomery, who returned the kick out of the end zone and then subsequently fumbled. Ty Montgomery, who was mad at the coaching staff for benching him earlier in the game. Ty Montgomery, who pretty much pissed off every teammate in that locker room and now is no longer a Green Bay Packer. They had to get rid of him.
Yep.
And I think the fact that they did, that's a no-nonsense move.
That's right.
And
it keeps morale up. That's what it does.
Well, it's bleep or get off the pot.
Yep. Yep. Sure.
And that's, there's a lot of pressure on Green Bay here. Coming off a really intense game on the one coast, now heading all the way to the other coast. They'll be under 500 if they lose here. But I can certainly understand the support for the Packers. They might well be every bit as good as New England, even though their record doesn't say it.
Well, you see, the way that you've kind of gone for both teams is the exact reason why I'm taking the Packers in the money line this week. It's because I'm not saying, oh, yeah, I'd love the Packers this week. Of course. I mean, Packers, and I don't like the Patriots. No, it has nothing to do with that. It's just that it is a tough game to call. And again, it's like I said, why wouldn't I then just roll the dice with Aaron Rodgers in that money line and say, hey, I didn't get it last week, but I got a second chance at that apple this week. And by the way, the other thing with Montgomery, I think the underlying thing that actually really will help the Packers, he won't be on the field anymore taking reps away from Aaron Jones. because Aaron Jones is by far the best running back on that team, and Mike McCarthy's stupid enough not to give him more reps, but now he'll be forced to give Aaron Jones more reps, and that will give the Packers a better chance for success on the ground. So.
Sure. Here's the problem. I mean, again, I have mixed feelings about this game. At various times this week, I'm like, I'm going to play Green Bay, and at various times this week, I've talked myself out of it. So I haven't bet them yet. I haven't released it yet. I haven't done anything with that yet. But one of the things that has kept me from getting the betting window with Green Bay this week is
Mike McCarthy.
Do I really want Mike McCarthy catching less than a touchdown against Bill Belichick?
Against Bill
Especially
Belichick,
after the Patriots looked so sloppy on Monday night, and devalued in that regard. And again, I know they covered in the end on the pick six, but bettors who had New England in that game is not the same way. There's not that same level of enthusiasm, perhaps, as there might be at other times.
Yeah, trust me, I'm definitely not. This is all about Aaron Rodgers. I'm blanking out Mike McCarthy with my money this week. And Mike McCarthy, he's not coaching the Packers, is he? No, he's not coaching the Packers. It's Aaron Rodgers. That's all I care about. All right. Yeah. Ted, appreciate it. And we'll check out your guaranteed picks at experts.covers.com.
Yeah, you can find all my stuff at covers.com every single day.
Talk to you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ted. That is Teddy Covers. Actually, I should say Ted Sevransky, a.k.a. Teddy Covers. All right, Jamie Uyeyama is next. We're going to talk Notre Dame football. By the way, our college football show is going to be on a little bit later on with Mitch Light, so we're going to go through every conference in college football. No guest this week, and I did that on purpose. I could have had Jamie on as a guest, but I said, you know what? I got to get Jamie on this show as a guest because I really need extra time this week. We've had guests on for the past month on the college football show, and that has just it's kind of set us back as far as time. And we just really need to spend a lot of time on everything going on in every conference because there's just so much happening right now. I mean, if you take a look at the schedule this week, there's like 4 or 5 games at 3:30, really good games. And that's just the really good games. What if you have your favorite team that you root for is not in one of those good games? Then you got your game and 4 or 5 games. I mean, it's impossible to watch them all unless you got a DVR. And then you've got the big game, of course, Alabama-LSU Saturday night. And then they throw Notre Dame and Northwestern on Saturday night as well. And I'm like, okay, well, what's on at 12? What, Army Air Force? Okay, that's cute. But they could have played that one on Friday night or something, or a Thursday night. So I just wish, I've said this before, I wish the NFL would take the games off on Thursday nights and instead have college football make these Thursday night games, like put really big games on every Thursday night in college football. Because college football has so many games to choose from, you can find big games on Thursday nights. You would hope. Same thing on Fridays. So this is a really bad, tough week with all these great games to watch in college football. So I'm going to be pretty dizzy heading into the night games. The only good thing about the Notre Dame game being on at the same time as Alabama is that it will start an hour before. So this way I could kind of DVR the LSU-Alabama game, catch up to that game at halftime of Notre Dame Northwestern. But let's talk more about Notre Dame. And we'll do that by welcoming in our special guest. He is with IrishSportsDaily.com, Jamie Uyeyama. Jamie, have I said your last name correctly?
Close enough. That was a good effort.
Okay, what is it?
It's Uyeyama, yeah.
Uyeyama.
You're close, yeah.
Uyeyama.
Yeah.
Okay. See, I screwed up. But that's okay. I was close enough, like you said. All right, so Jamie, you're a former player.
Yeah, I played at Idaho State.
Okay, Idaho.
Idaho State's a Big Sky Conference FCS school. Played defensive line there, and I coached a little bit in college in Canada and also at the high school level. And
how did you get on board with Irish Sports Daily?
Well, I just was, I had worked in sports media before, and I was kind of doing some freelance stuff in terms of recruit evaluations and writing for some other sites, and I was writing for another Notre Dame site, and I ended up meeting Christian McCullum, who's a longtime reporter for our Sports Daily, and
Okay.
they had an opening. They're looking for a football analyst position, and that's kind of what led me to there. And I also grew up being I was a Notre Dame guy growing up.
Okay. Well, talk about then if you're breaking down Notre Dame and how they've played, how they've looked this season compared to the way that you thought they were going to look. What is it that they've been able to accomplish this season so far that might have exceeded expectations?
Well, I certainly think Ian Book is definitely a surprise.
Sure.
It's not that he didn't have a good camp when we saw him there, but certainly he wasn't really given an opportunity to be the guy in camp. I'm not surprised by what some of the offensive skill guys have done when he's been in there, because I actually thought that there was going to be a lot of guys like Miles Boykin and Chase Claypool and even Chris Fink and some of these other guys that they were going to surprise some people this year. I thought they did really. You knew Notre Dame was going to have a good defense. They obviously returned a bunch of really great players from last year, so that was not a surprise at all. But I think just the way that you saw some of those guys perform in camp and how they were some of the offensive guys in camp, you knew those guys were going to be players. They just needed to find ways to get those guys the football, and obviously with Book, coming in, he's kind of changed the whole dynamic of the offense.
The Ball State game we can kind of forgive because that was still Wimbush, and so sometimes it just bleeds through, especially when he had 3 interceptions in the game, and they had a lead. What were they up like 18 points anyway in the fourth quarter? So I don't care about that one. And to tell you this, you don't even care about the Vandy game either because that was also Wimbush. But for the first time against Pitt, the team struggled. Was that just one of those weeks, or is there something in that game? Because the Navy game, completely different type of team, and Pitt does seem to be playing pretty well right now, and Pitt's a major step up over Navy this season. So was there something in the Pitt game that, like Northwestern, can try to take advantage of?
Well, I think, there's some of it in terms of what they could do in terms of possessing the ball, and that's kind of what, Pitt's strategy was. Like, they had their opening drive. They held the ball for 10 minutes.
Wow.
Right? So, that kind of thing is it's similar to, Army gave Oklahoma game earlier in the year. Well, Oklahoma, ran a very limited amount of plays. They had a very limited amount of possessions that game. And that's what Pitt did. They played really smart in terms of, trying to limit the possessions for Notre Dame. Certainly you got to give them credit for what they did on defense. And they forced Notre Dame to try to throw the ball deep. And, I think it took too long for Notre Dame to kind of attack the deep middle part of the field.
Okay.
And, once they did in the fourth quarter and they made some adjustments, they really, exposed some things and were able to move the ball and score points. But, when you have only a limited amount of possessions, that limits the amount of mistakes you can make. And, they turned the ball over a couple times that game. And that's why the game was a lot closer, than it probably should have been. I think Notre Dame is clearly a better team than Pitt. And, they're a much better team than Northwestern, too. But, Northwestern, they do have the capability to make it a tight game. And I would say, definitely Northwestern has a much better defense than Pitt. So it'll be interesting to see if Notre Dame can't run the ball and they stack the box, they're going to force Ian Book to throw it deep. And, he's been a little bit inconsistent with that. And if that's something that's not on in the game can be a lot closer than it should be.
Yeah, I think Notre Dame has to play one of their top 2 or 3 games of the season this week. That's because Northwestern may not be a great football team, but compared to some of the because really, at the time of playing some of the games, Virginia Tech, Stanford, maybe these are good teams, and now they really haven't ended up that way. Now maybe they've just their season's gone downhill since losing to Notre Dame. Who knows? But psychologically, but fact is that Northwestern is heading in a completely different direction. They're playing their best football of the year. They're finding all sorts of weird ways and clutch plays and gutsy plays to win games, and that's a dangerous opponent, as you know. especially the fact that it's going to be on the road. This is just a tremendous opportunity for the program. I know Northwestern. See, the trick, though, the difference is that Northwestern is still trying to win a Big Ten championship. So there is that. And you tell me, as a former player, how difficult that will be to try. I mean, because you know how hard it is to get up for one game really, really intensely and then try and come back with the same fire the next week. For Northwestern, realistically, this game doesn't matter as much, except for pride, because this isn't a Big Ten game. They need the games coming up, including next week at Iowa, more than they need this game.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly true. And I think, Pat Fitzgerald has done a good job of obviously, within their conference. I think they've won 12 of the last 13 in the Big Ten games. And, they put a lot of focus on that part of it. And
yeah.
I'm sure no matter what happens in this game, they're going to be able to, bounce back and refocus. And, it's a well-coached team,
oh, yeah.
and they're very disciplined. I think they're actually, in terms of the number of penalties, are the least penalized program in the nation, actually. So they're just a team that, I think that they come out in the same way. It's very rare that they come out and lay an egg. They're just the kind of program that they, he always has his guys prepared. They always play hard. They certainly don't lose because of like a lack of discipline or a lack of effort in each week. So I think, I'm sure the kids there, they recognize the opportunity.
Yeah.
Beating Notre Dame
oh, yeah.
is different than beating, even though it means more in terms of what it means for their postseason and all that to beat Iowa. But beating Notre Dame, that's the kind of thing that they can tell they beat an undefeated Notre Dame
That's
team,
right.
knock them up thing. That's the kind of thing they can talk about years from now,
yes,
right?
correct.
After. So
yeah.
I'm certain it's going to be a really important game that they're going to try to pull it all the stops to win.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that game. And what about the rest of the season for Notre Dame? I know we've heard some people remark that the schedule isn't all that tough, but as I mentioned with Teddy a few minutes ago, that's just not true. I mean, again, Notre Dame is not Alabama. Every one of these games, with the exception more than likely of next week's game, is going to be tough. And it's really asking a lot for Notre Dame, but this is what happens every year with their independent schedule. They're going to play a lot of really good teams. So, what about the opportunity that Notre Dame would have if they didn't go undefeated? And what do you think they may have to do, or which team do you think they may have to lose to in order to still get a fair shake and an opportunity for the playoffs?
You know what? I don't really see a way of them. Maybe this game would be this upcoming game.
The sooner the better.
Game. The sooner the better. Yeah,
yeah.
The way that I would look at it. But even then, I think it's tough just because they're only going to have that one ranked opponent left in Syracuse, and unless some other things break their way, like Michigan is going to continue to be ranked, right? But could another program kind of rise up and be ranked? I don't know. I don't really see it out of those other things. So they're just not going to have the wins, the quality of wins that some of these other one-loss teams have. And then you throw in the not having a conference championship.
Yeah,
it's going to be tough. So I just think it's just one of those things where if you look at their last year's schedule, it was incredibly tough. I think they ended up playing, including the bowl game, they played 7 teams that finished ranked in the top 25. It's just, at the beginning of the season, they had 5 teams that were ranked in the initial AP top 25, and it's just a lot of those teams haven't lived up to expectations or have had injuries. So it's just the kind of way that it worked out. So it's just one of those things where I think they're really going to have to run the table to do so.
Yeah,
to make the playoffs.
And just show you how crazy it is with the whole 4-team playoff thing is that if Notre Dame were to lose this week, they would fall behind Michigan. And why though? I mean, they both have one loss, and Notre Dame beat Michigan. That's not right, but that's what would happen. And that is why the system still has some tweaking that needs to be done, and some teams they need to add and so forth. But that's the whole poll thing of when you lose and that kind of momentum. And it's just I think it's unfair. I think it's one of those situations where if I'm a pollster, I'm redoing my polls every week from scratch. I am not going, well, I had this team here and I got them there, so they won there, so now I have to move them there. No. Every week I am completely changing my outlook on the poll for this specific reason. Because if this were to happen and I did have Michigan like one spot behind Notre Dame and everybody else wanted to move Notre Dame behind Michigan with a loss, I wouldn't be the one to do that. I'd say, okay, I'm starting over again. Okay, let me look. Oh, Michigan lost one. Notre Dame lost one. Michigan lost to Notre Dame. Notre Dame's ahead of Michigan. That's how I do it.
Yeah, and I think, what the point you were bringing up before about, before I came on when you were talking about all the great games this weekend, the real thing is that there's a lot of football left to play, right? Like, the teams that everyone who you think is going to win, it's probably not going to go down that way because it never does, right? Because it's college football.
Yes.
So it's never going to quite go down the way that you expect it to go. And it might be something where if, say, Notre Dame lost this week and then, they won the next 3 games convincingly, I mean, are you really going to look at Michigan and say, with a head-to-head, them losing to Notre Dame and they're going to get in? What's so maddening about having these early rankings is because they might, in the end, the committee might have Michigan above Notre Dame, but in the end, they might have to just say, well, Notre Dame beat Michigan, and then change what they've done for the past 3 weeks, right? So it's
possible.
It's
sure. Yeah, anything has happened with that committee.
Ridiculous, thing, but it's just what we got.
Talk about as far as all these top defenders on Notre Dame. Who are the top pro prospects? Like the really good top pro prospects, because I know there's a lot of good defenders on this team.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like it's definitely the on the defense side of the things. That's where the majority of them are. Jerry Tillery is certainly a guy who's probably going to be. He has a chance at being a first round pick, right? You just don't see too many guys that are 6'7".
Oh yeah.
300 pounds. 3 technique kind of move like he can. A guy who can versatile play in a lot of different systems. So he's got a chance to be a first-round pick, probably, a day 2 pick at the very least. Julian Love, who's obviously having another terrific season, probably on his way to having another All-American caliber season. He's a junior, so he would have to leave, but, I think he's someone that, if he's not a first-round pick, he's another day 2 guy, right? And I think Tavon Coney certainly, linebacker Tavon Coney certainly a guy who's going to go, somewhere in the kind of day 2, maybe early day 3 range. I think that, some of the other guys, I don't know if they're going to leave. Drew Tranquil, I think it depends. Well, he's obviously going to leave, but it depends on what his health status is. He's had some previous knee injuries in his career. I think he's definitely a draftable guy, but whether or not he's a high pick, I don't know. But then they have some other guys that I think, Khalid Kareem and Julian Arquara are right at the top of the list. Defensive ends both having really great years, but I don't know if they're going to be projected high enough where they would leave after this year. But I think whenever they choose to go, those guys are probably going to be high picks and probably playing in the league for a very long time.
All right. Sounds good. Appreciate it, Jamie. Look forward to getting the opportunity to talk to you again at some point, especially if this becomes a playoff season for Notre Dame. And who knows, maybe Notre Dame and Michigan can find their way into the playoffs. And wouldn't that be nice?
I'd be all for it. It'd be fun.
Yeah. I'm a Michigan fan. So I know you probably wouldn't realize that after I was just going all pro Notre Dame versus Michigan on you, but I'm just a realist. So anyway, that'd be great for college football. So Jamie, appreciate it again. Thanks a lot, and best of luck on Saturday night.
Thanks for having me.
You got it. All right. That will wrap it up now. So again, want to thank Jamie Uyeyama from IrishSportsDaily.com. Usually we have Mike Frank on, the publisher, but Mike couldn't make it, so Jamie did a really good job stepping in for him. Coming up in a couple hours, we're going to talk college football, wall-to-wall college football on College Football Weekly with Mitch Light from Athlon Sports. So we're going to go through every conference. We're going to update all the different races, where everybody stands. We'll give our predictions, analysis, injury updates, trends, everything you want to know about the week in college football's games. And I'm not sure how many headlines there are this week. Durkin's back at Maryland. I guess we could talk about that. But anyway, that'll be coming up a little bit later on today on the Our Lads Football Radio Network. And, of course, thanks to Ted Sevransky from experts.covers.com for joining us. You can also follow Teddy on Twitter at Teddy_covers. So thanks for tuning in to the OFN Today, which returns on Tuesday with Dave Koken. I'm Greg DePalma. We'll see you next time. Don't forget, you know that drill. Alpha, Mike, Foxtrot.